Hey everybody, this is Wallace. I am a friggin' vampire. Uh, uh, I'm gonna just try to not. You ever just like not want to say the right thing? You just want to just like be real. That's what I'm gonna try to do. Uh, Not try to just say the right thing, or let that part of me or the leadership part of me speak, but just be myself. My more gentle self. Um, more peaceful self. Um, I've got a I've got some time off of work here coming up pretty soon, and be good for me. Um, Sorry, I don't know why my phone is doing that, but but yeah, I'm just working on my computer, um, keeping my mind busy, but also just working on uh, just coding, computer programming. Done it for a long time, and I've gotten better at not thinking about things too much, and just doing it. And I enjoy it, and most of the time I can only do it when I'm like completely focused because the stuff I'm working on is pretty difficult for me. Uh, Complex. I like that. It's like solving like a, I want to say Sudoku. I don't even know how to say it because I've never actually done one, but I've seen other people do those kind of puzzles. uh, but yeah, the way I see the world is pretty simple, in a lot of respects. I like doing what I do, and I know there's a lot of other things out there, but I don't really think about that. I like to stay focused. Um, I'm good at a lot of things, and I kind of stick to what I'm good at. And growing up and being a rock star, it's fun. Got a lot of things going for me. Um, keep doing these therapy videos, and it's hard for me. Like, um, I know I try too hard, and I'm like doing too much, but I'm like super strong, and I've got different transformations. It's not really a good excuse to say that. It's like I'm just a person. Clearly, I'm like, or should I say, I'm still a person. But when people are looking at me, and relying on me, it's just something inside of me just like says, okay, let's. I'm gonna be at my best when people are relying on me or giving me like extra attention. I feel like I'm on stage, that feeling. You're like, I gotta be the best. And it's like my body wants to be at its best. It's like it'd be easier just to be at my best than to pretend or tell myself just to, you know, chill out. But I do that, I let things chill out. But then there's always just a part of me. It's just like, well, it's like looking out for others, and I know I do it too much. It just comes naturally, it's just easy for me, but and like I'm trying to do things the easy way. I know that sounds extremely ironic for me to say that, but like what comes easily to me is not what comes easily to other people. And I realize I've got a lot of pressure, like a lot of, I would say a while back, maybe like a year ago, I would say that, or like maybe like in the beginning of this video series, talking about how being what I'm doing and what I do every day, that it's a lot, but like I think I may have said that, it's like it's something that I have to do to grow up, to be who I am. And I said, well, I'm just gonna keep on trucking along, but now I've just gotten so used to it. It's kind of sad. I am afraid of losing everything, of course. I feel that, and even that fear, it has effect on me at times. I know that it's good for me. I don't as much as I have. I realize it could all be gone in an instant. All the people I know. My job, my even being in this town. I love this town, but I realize, it's. I think about things. I think about like worst case scenario, not worst case, but like kind of worst case, which is like, well, don't have my job anymore. Then try to find another job. What if I can't find another job because I'm well known to be a vampire, and I'm a very strong leader, a very strong presence. Maybe not a very strong leader so much, I'm just kind of being myself. I just have a rock star presence, and that's it can be very overpowering, And what if I can't find a job? What if if I blow? What if I go through my savings and I have to move somewhere? I mean, that's not the end of the world. Clearly, it's not like, oh, but I don't want that. But I guess it's good for me to talk about because, like, if, let's say I go through all my savings and I can't afford my apartment, I can't find a job. I got some other plans. Like I got some other things I could be doing, and I know how to. I feel grateful to have gotten so as far as I have gotten as a person because I know that I can rely on just being nice. And when people look at me funny, I'm just a rock star. I'm super nice. I know how to talk to people. And I know how the I'm just grateful to have some experience with having people and introducing myself to strangers who I really want to like me, so that I can have a place to live and have employment, but it's hard. It's a little bit easier being, kind of having a rock star look and being recognized as that. But for being a vampire, it's I don't know. It depends on the people I'm talking to, who, um, but there's definitely a dread, a fear, a failure. I don't know if that's a strong motivating force for me. I'm like, well, if I'm screwed over, it's going to be really screwed over. But I know that's not so much the case. And I know I should think about it more and talk about it more because it's not, as big and scary as I make it out to be. I think about it, and but I'm not too worried. I guess I am a little bit too worried, to be honest, right now, or else I wouldn't be thinking about it. You know, um, I know it sounds kind of bad, but I'm just gonna be real for a second. I really don't. I don't. I've got my as far as people who I'm like really. This is like gonna make me look really bad, but I'm just be real, and I think people who know me would probably agree with me in some ways. That I don't really have many ties to being where I'm at right now. I really don't. Besides people I care about and what I like doing. You know, um, I've got my grandparents. That's basically it. I don't have a wife. I don't have kids. As soon as my bankruptcy is over, I don't really even have to stay in Alabama, even though I like being here. You know, and here's the thing. Like I realize that and this is just speaking for myself, but I know this is true for other people too. That when you're in a mentality you know, where you don't have much to lose, you start thinking different. You know, uh, and it's very helpful for like a rock star mentality. Being a rock star, I'm just like, hey, I'm gonna. Everybody, people know me, know that I like to work hard or whatever, or like to be nice. If I'm out, talking about just being outside in general, being around people, and I'm gonna do that anyways. But me being relaxed and actually feeling like a rock star and like dancing around and singing and stuff and like playing guitar and doing art, and enjoying myself, being happy. That comes with the kind of carefreeness, and I realize it's kind of short lived. For me, it's short lived because I care about people, and it's not just women. Uh, but I care about some of these guys, man, that are incredible to me, and I don't want to let anybody down. I know that feeling. I know that feeling very, very, very well. And it's not about me in that regards. It's like uh, I know how to deal with those feelings, but other people, I don't want to be a bad example, and that's excruciating for me because I have to set an example for vampires. Like I don't really want to, but I have to because I realize that people not only do they think about me and wonder and have whatever thoughts, but they remember me. And I want them not to remember me by my failure or failures. In that sense, it's a lot of pressure, you know, And I know there's some people that I like that are just like, man, just chill out, just chill. You know, everything's good. We'll take care of the rest. You know, in a lot of respects. But I'm just like, I would like to do that, but I mean, what's so wrong with just being chill as a vampire? You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Uh, you know, part of me wants to say this, or probably I should say this, but I don't actually want to say this. But like, screw other people. You know, I'm just living my life, which is just like completely untrue. But it's also it's good for me to say that at least. You know, uh, and I have to ask myself, like, do I wish that was actually true? I don't think so. Maybe be interesting to think about. See how it affects me. I probably need to, honestly. You know, I'm naturally myself. When I'm naturally myself and I'm just like not really giving a damn and just being myself, it's usually when I'm at my best. I'm more content and having fun. I don't know. It's just every time I'm a. I think there's a phrase like I've heard it several times in movies, but like the expression "I'm a bleeding heart," like I'm a bleeding heart for this or that. You know, it's like you're. It's like saying that you're. Let me give an example. It's like I see someone having a bad day, or someone who feels alone. You know, or feels you could I could just detect that they're feeling lonely and sad. And there's somebody I kind of know, like I know their name or whatever. I like always, maybe I won't say anything, but I'll start putting on a show or like, you know, doing something to kind of help them in some way. I'm a bleeding heart for that. Because I've I spent so much time in that position, in that way of existing. And it's just, I know I can just leave it alone. You know, it's not my problem. It's not my, but it's like, I don't know. There's just something inside of me that's just like, I think goes back to me being too good of a guy. You know, I think that's a good example of that kind of behavior of you know always helping people in certain situations. It's not entirely true. I wouldn't always do that. If I was feeling evil and selfish, which I nowadays I really don't even feel like I can. I know it's possible for me to be evil and selfish, but the way that people look at me just like makes me it's like impossible to be evil for me. Um, like if you've seen people look at you with such strong admiration in their eyes. I'm not saying it's everyone. I'm not saying it's a lot of people, but there's just some people um, that I know, and it's just like, man, it does something to me. It does something to me deep down inside, and it's just like, well, it's like it's time to be a hero again. It's time to put on a show. It's time to be an entertainer. It's time to be a rock star. Time to be a leader. Time to be a good guy vampire. Time to make some jokes. Time to, my body. Time for my body to get powered up and try to help. It's just like I should. I honestly, I want to play the devil's advocate, and that's an expression where you just pretty much say the wrong thing, but for a reason. I shouldn't be doing that, but like why? So what? Someone's looking at me. So what? There's people looking at me with admiration. So what? So what? My body is deep down inside reacting to it in a in a good way. So what? Like, what about the bigger picture? And then I have to ask myself, what bigger picture? And then, I think about what some other people say, and I'm like, well, the bigger picture of Wally, of Wallace, the rock star vampire dude. And I'm like, well, I'm just pretty much blocking all of that out for the most part. I'm just, and I have to ask myself why. Am I blocking out my self, my identity, because I feel deep down inside an obligation to help people who admire me? That doesn't even make sense. Maybe it does make sense to my body, but it's like my body does plenty of things I don't listen to. Maybe this is one of those things I should, you know. And I know I've got trauma, I know I've got, when I was younger, I have two sisters, and seeing my sisters go through crap, it affected me. And I'm like, well, I don't want that. I don't want that for anybody, you know. But, as much as I want to have a positive influence or try to, within boundaries, try to protect people from certain things, it's not my job, you know. And I have to ask myself if it's based in trauma, that's never good. I don't think it's ever good, you know. Part of me wants to say, do things based off of logic, rational thought, but like I've learned so much that so much is irrational, you know, that is just as right as rational thought is. And what's wrong with doing good things because of trauma in the past? I mean, the statement that I said that trauma is always wrong and doing things out based off of, I mean, clearly there's a better way of doing things than to be held back by the past. But what's wrong with that? If you're doing good by it. I mean, I have to think back to a video I think I made last night where I was saying, it's just like maybe it was a few nights ago. I was just like talking about how humility or anything can be taken too far and become twisted, and then suddenly making decisions. Yeah, sure, some decisions are probably based off of the correct moral fiber necessary, but it can be taken too far, and suddenly, I'm unhappy, I think that's a simple way of putting it. Or, and I realize that no one's really looking out for me but myself. I spend time around adults. Adults, generously um, put time and effort into me. I'm sure it's very frustrating for them and for me too. But uh, for really, it's just myself, And I don't like opening up to people. I have been doing more so recently, and it's hard for me to accept. I've really blocked that out. That I know that if shit hits the fan, that I could rely on other people. I could ask honestly, and people could look at me and identify if I'm actually telling the truth. They could feel me. They could feel my energy, how I feel, and say, "Yeah, he he really lost it all," you know. And do I worry about losing it all and like my money and my friends and family? Like I realize that my family's old. They're gonna pass away eventually. You know, I have people who admire me and some people who obsess about me. And I wouldn't feel good about asking. Unless I had to ask for help. It's different. But maybe there's something wrong with me there too. Like, why am I not um, asking for things? Just little things. You know, I used to when I was younger, but now that I'm older, I feel like I can take care of everything myself that I need. And then there's critics. There's people who say, "Well, no, you're not taking care of everything you need, stupid." But you're using your magic and your magical abilities or whatever, and you're making it through, and God only knows how you do it, but you you've built your own road, so to speak, your own path, and you're pretty good at it now. But I feel like there's a lot of people who are like that. Um, sometimes there's something inside of me that gets really frustrated with myself. Like I don't feel like I'm doing enough. But like if I wanted to do more, I'm faced with fear. You know, realities of life, and I don't know. I definitely I trust in God. I really do. Higher power. Um, because I know a lot of things are beyond me. Even if I don't accept it or if I block it out, I realize that I'm a person, and it's a double-edged sword, so to speak. I realize I'm a person. I treat myself like just a person, or a person like everyone else. And then I certain situations happen. And then it's like, oh, that's right, I'm a vampire. And this situation arose because uh, one of the effects of that reality. You know, and I'm like, but I'm just a person, and the situation is like, well, it don't matter how you think yourself. The reality is this. This, and this. And I'm like, well, shucks. That's out of my control. There are certain things out of my control, and I'm just being myself. And it's like, so what? It don't matter what you think. And this is me just talking to myself. This is still reality, and this is still the situation, regardless of what you think. And that's difficult for me. Uh, and you know, part of me says I need to be careful with some of these thoughts because I realize that I could unravel myself a bit. Um, it's like I'm trying to. It's like, oh, you're just trying to justify your existence by being charismatic and uh, you know like what really makes you so great. It don't matter how great you are. This is reality. you know like if you really wanted to be honest, would this situation be better with you, or with you not present there? And if you say that, if you're saying the truth and you think, like, oh, I think it's better that I'm here, and uh, in that particular situation. And then I may say, well, I can't help to just be living my life, you know. And then I think a certain thought that might unravel me is just, it was like, well, the situation would be better if you weren't around, if you were somewhere else. I'm like, well, that may be true, but I gotta live too, or try to live, just like every other person. In that way, I'm just like everybody else. So, and then I just turn it over to my higher power. When it gets too complicated to think about. uh, but sometimes when I look in my eyes, like I am now, like I remember, I talked about a woman that I used to date who went through having cancer. And sometimes when I look in my eyes, I see her eyes, or some of her expression in my eyes, and it makes me sad. But also, I'm glad that I kept that. Like part of me is, like when something happens, but you want to at least, like, there's got to be something positive that comes out of it, even if it's just the memory of a person, within my eyes or something like that, within my expression of my eyes. Well, at least I've got that. It sounds so terrible, but it's just a way of trying to be positive about, I that person's no longer in my life, and I think she got married. I don't know, but and another video talked about how I've struggled through um, trying to support her, and like sometimes I wish I didn't have so much reasons for things, like because I feel like some of my reasons are just excuses. And I know that I could go off on a go off on a. Well, that's the reality. I'm just making excuses, and a lot of the times, and I want to work on that on myself. The excuses that I've come up with for things, but the explanations for certain things. I want to work on that, but I will. Anywho, I'm gonna go ahead and end the video. The video is kind of long. Didn't realize it, and thank y'all for listening, and hope y'all have a good night. Bye.